that we call the Finance Audit Tender and Administration Committee meeting to start Wednesday, June 7th, 2023, 3:30. Order of business. Called order. Just on the called order, just like to just make reference. Councillor Drong, at our last committee meeting, we had talked on our budget, and I know after the last council meeting there was you were good enough to get a message out to the CBC on the allocation of grant dollars and some other comments on the thing, and I just I'm assuming that CBC were clear that you sat on the finance committee, because in looking at that, it some of the questions or comments, at the committee level here, we had talked about a grants policy, we had talked about the bylaw, which we approved. We made recommendations on grant allocations, and we were pretty much in agreement on the allocation of grants, with the exception, I know you had issue with the Confederation Centre. It was your recommendation. You were okay with it going to council for 200, but you wouldn't be supporting it, to that number. And then just, I just felt like after viewing your comments, it kind of thought perhaps you may have been out of sync with what we were kind of recommending here from the finance committee to council, and then on the vote, you never saw your way to kind of support it on the vote. I'm guessing that maybe had a lot to do with the Confederation Centre, but there could have been a motion put on the floor to and there were no motions put on the floor to do otherwise. So I just wondered if you could help me with your rationale for that.
Yeah, thanks for your question, Councillor McAleer. That was like last month, so I'm not really sure. A lot of things went on since then. This is a call to order. I don't know if you want to discuss it here in the adoption of the minutes, or next time maybe give me a heads up that you're going to ask a question I can have an answer for. I don't really know what you're talking about. I give interviews all the time, so I'm not really sure what you're asking. Again, I think you're asking about why I didn't support it, the grants bylaw, and I just didn't think it was finished yet. I know here today it's back on the agenda to look at, which is new and improved, and yeah, so if I don't agree with something, I'll speak out about it.
Yeah.
Again, I have no idea what you're talking about in different.
Well, I guess I'll try to be more specific. I just felt as a committee, we're as councillors, we're elected, and committee chairs were elected to make decisions. From the broad numbers, how did we come up with the numbers and the allocations and our rationale? As you know, through the committee process, our budget process, we had requests for 1.8 million. We couldn't give away 1.8 million. We had to come up with a number. We come up with a number of 500,000, and then our finance committee kind of had to work from there. We did have the requests that come in, and I just thought as a committee, I think your expression perhaps in one of your interviews was kind of ad hoc. We had to make decisions, as a committee, with a $500,000 budget, with the requests we had in front of us. We said no to some requests, and we had to make dollar allocations. And I just felt I thought we were kind of together on that as a committee, and I think now I know in your interview you talk about criteria. There's got to be a better process, and I'm all for that. And I think in today's, I think we'll see there's some there's a piece in today's agenda that finance is committed in terms of criteria. If there's different a lens can be looked at in some of these grants, but nothing's going to be perfect. And I just think with the existing recommendations that came from the committee that went to council, I think we made the best decisions with what we had in front of us that met the current grants bylaw, that met and it met also the current grants policy and strategic plan with the dollars we allocated. So anyway, but I mean, I also think it's, you made the point about there's got to be a better criterion grid, and maybe further in our agenda, when we come to that's something that maybe can be improved upon possibly. So anyway, just
No,
just my comment.
no problem. I can respond to that. I remember, before the election, you called me and you wanted to discuss what to do, how to get elected, how, what you should do and all this stuff. And at that time, I always said to you, I'm upfront. If I don't agree with the decision, where you're going, if we sit on committees, then I'll vote against it. So, I don't know if you forgot about that, but I didn't agree with some of this stuff, how it was going down. So that's why I didn't agree to it at the committee level. And then when CBC asks me a question or two, I'll certainly elaborate why, and I think that's what I did, now that I think about it. I mean, we're sitting here as a committee, we put it ahead to council, but I don't always agree, and I'm certainly everybody else doesn't agree, so that's the part of the business we're in. If you're in this seat and you're looking at stuff that you don't agree, you speak out. I think we started at the grants bylaw was over $1 million. We dropped it down to 500, and I still wasn't happy with that. So I'll vote against it, and I'll continue to vote against anything I don't agree with. So, just be aware. That's
No, that's fair. I'm not suggesting you obviously you're going to vote your conscience and
Exactly.
what you think's correct. So we just leave it at that. Just comment. Just debate. It's transparent. It's here. This is open. It's not closed. So thank you for that. Without that, we'll just move on. Declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any? Approval of agenda.
Mr. Chair, I'm looking at the agenda and I have another appointment to attend. So could I ask number 9 to move up and replace number 6? So 6 becomes 7, 7 becomes 8, and so forth. Is that all right? It's improving planning and heritage service standards by modernizing the department's operational structure. And as for number 11, I can just lead that. I can speak to the manager of finance later in the week. But if that's okay with the committee, to take 9 to move it up to 6, 6 becomes 7, 7 becomes 8, and so forth. That's okay.
I'm fine with that. Is the committee, Councillor Drong, Councillor McKay, be okay with that?
sure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll do that. So then, we've got that change in the agenda numbering. So approval of agenda? So, and seconded by your worship. So adoption of the minutes, May 3rd, 2023 minutes. Is there any discussion on those minutes?
Mr. Chair, just going forward on the discussion that just took place, if you look at number 6, page 3, page 4, new grant request. If you go back down to the bottom, it says Councillor Duran would like it noted that he would like Confederation of the Arts to be 100,000 versus 200,000. Councillor McCabe would also recommend these grants be looked at yearly. A motion to advance to council was made by Councillor McCabe and second by Councillor Duran. So I think just so we know where we're all going, if we do have a vote, I'd like to have the vote recorded in the future. Yeas and nays. Thank you.
So noted.
I had a question here.
Councillor Drown?
Thank you. Yeah, so if we're discussing the minutes, I know the mayor wanted to give 500,000 to the Confederation Center, and we were in discussion. Just a second, we were in discussion, and then it came down to 200,000, and then I wasn't comfortable with that, so I said, well, let's put it on the table, like drop it to 100. Let's get some criteria in place. And then we'll put this on to council, which a lot of times we do. So I okayed that to go to council, or I motioned it to go to council. But when it came to council, that's when I discussed, or I thought, well, you know what, I'm not happy with that either. Like, a lot of times we make decisions here, and then sober second thought, when it goes to council, I wasn't happy with that, so that's why I voted against it. So that's what happens in these committees. Just because you say one thing here doesn't mean it's good for gold. So you can change your mind on another vote. So that's what happened in that case. Thanks.
Thank you for that.
Mr. Chair, I do appreciate what was said by Councillor Duran, but I think going forward, yes, we do change our minds because new information comes along, but I think that the discussion that took place at that meeting under number 6, moved by Councillor McCabe, second by Councillor Duran, I just think that if we're going to provide some guidance to council in supporting a resolution or not supporting a resolution, especially significant money-related resolutions, I just want to be consistent. So I'm asking that if we do have votes I'm asking for votes in the future, that we have them recorded. That's it. Thank you.
Councillor McCabe?
I'm looking forward to when we get to the report on the grant evaluation application, because I do think now that we've added, again, more stuff to our criteria, it's not going to be so inconsistent or confusing, and I think we can probably have more discussion when we get to that point.
No, absolutely. Yep. Thank you. Okay, we're good to, on the minutes? Oh, say, no, go ahead,
Yeah,
Councillor
so
Duran.
if we change that 9, will the mayor be here for that grants policy? Or are you going to be gone at that time?
I'm going to be gone, but I read the policy and I read the grants bylaw. We have a bylaw.
disagreed.
I know that at our next meeting, there will be business arising from the minutes. And if there's something that I want to bring up, I'll bring it up at that point in time. Again,
Yeah, I mean, we move it to council all the time.
well,
anyway.
just correct me if I'm wrong, CAO Eleanor or Sue Fraser. Do policies go to council for approval? So the policy that we did this afternoon for Parks and Recreation, that'll be going? Okay. I'll read it over there. I'll read the minutes from this meeting for Monday's regular monthly meeting. Thank you.
Okay, so are we good and forward with the adoption of the minutes? Moved by Councillor Drummond? Councillor, or Your Worship, seconded by Councillor McCabe? Okay. Number 5, have guests with us here from Eastlink Centre today, CCMI, operating budget. I'll just ask that you introduce yourself. So it's the, as the agenda says, the operating budget for Eastlink Centre, presented by Eastlink Centre staff. You're welcome, and you're good to go.
My name is Phil Matushovich. I'm the chair of the board. And with me is
I'm Janet Caird, and box office manager and finance, standing in for John Abbott.
So I'm assuming you'd like a few introductory comments before we get into... Yeah. Well, Mr. Chair, Your Worship, members of the council, thank you for the opportunity to present our budget today and hopefully clarify any questions that you may have. As I said, Janet Cairns was with us here, the box office and finance manager, and I'd like to acknowledge the work that both Janet and John put into this budget. We made a special effort to make sure that our expenses and revenues were a realistic picture of what is occurring at Eastlink. Unfortunately, John is unable to be with us here today. And I'd also like to acknowledge the efforts that Betty French has made with changing the grant process so that it occurs on a quarterly basis, so that it better helps us manage our cash flow. And I'm not sure from here how you want to proceed with regards to the budget itself.
Maybe Phil will just have you take us over the high points of it, and then we'll see if there's any questions from the committee.
Sure. So from the revenue side, the one thing I would point out on the revenue side, the joint management agreement hasn't been renewed since 2018. So, and we've received correspondence from the province that they're now prepared to begin looking at that. So hopefully, in a not too distant future, the joint management agreement could go forward. You can see on the revenue side, we're looking at 1.278 in terms of that. The grant for salaries is 410. Operation is 613, and the grant from the province. So for a $1.278 $800 million budget. On the arena side, in terms of revenue, our major tenant, the Islanders, we're looking at $115,000 in revenue. We had projected $114,000 with the ECBL. Unfortunately, as you may know, the league folded early, so the revenues there are going to be down. It was working out to $62.50 a game, and because of the cancellation, currently we've received $10,000, and we have receivables of approximately $30,000. And then we get into the ice rentals for minor sports, $114,000. Other ice rentals, $125,000. Tournaments, $60,000, and adult skates. So total revenues of $419,200. On the trade center side, we have Old Home Week, which will generate $55,000, and miscellaneous on the trade center side, another $75,000. I would note that this year we're seeing an uptake on trade center activity. We have a couple of high schools that have been using the trade center for graduation and banquets. We've had more concerts, and we now have wheelchair accessibility, so that's improved the viability of the trade center in terms of concerts. Janet, do you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, that we get a ramp to go up to the staging now, so you can use it for every event. We were having issues with, especially graduation ceremonies. We have 2 of them coming up in the next few weeks. They needed to be able to get up on the stage, so we managed to find a second-hand one for quite cheap. So it'll be good for every event now if anybody needs to get up on the stage. But yeah, we definitely have a lot more events going on. We're just about to go on sale with a kids show next week, Blippi. Anybody that has little kids might know who they are. And we have a partnership with Red Shores, and we've been doing some concerts for them in the Trade Center. And we have the Saturday Night Hoedown is going to broadcast live from our place in a couple of weeks' time. And that will be the first of hopefully many if it goes. They're hoping, we're at 550 sold now, and they were hoping for about 700, so we should be able to get to that. Elvis impersonator Thane Dunn has just gone on sale this week for there. And we have Buck Cherry is coming the last week of June so far. Along with there's a nurses convention tomorrow night dinner for 800 people in the Trade Center. So it's nice to see COVID over and picking back up again with lots of events on sale.
So with that, we are projecting revenues of $130,000. If we move on to the event grounds, the $23,000 is for the Shellfish Festival. And then there's some rental income there of $1,000. Moving on to some of the miscellaneous, we're projecting $133,000. There's a marketing grant of $50,000, which is significant, and ticket printing revenues of $60,000 and rebates. Maybe Jen, just make a comment on the ticket sales and rebates.
So we have a few streams for ticket printing revenue. One of them goes under the Islanders because we negotiated a new contract with them last year, so we're finally making money off of every ticket we sell, not just phone ones and internet. So we had 50,000 over in the Islanders side, and then 60 is for other events that we do. I expect that if we continue to get as many shows as we're now looking at, that we will exceed the 60,000 for sure. We charge like $2 a ticket plus another service fee to cover our credit card charges. So that, and then the rebates are the naming rights for Eastlink Center is that the Islanders pay a portion to us for the naming rights of Eastlink Center that they get from Eastlink. So.
So, Mr. Chair, could I just ask a question? Is it all right, Philip, to ask? So what's the share between the Islanders and the Eastlink Center on the naming rights?
I believe we get 10% of all, like some of theirs is gift in kind.
Right,
So
services.
I think it's 110. It's on a scale for,
Is it a
I wanna say
10-year,
it's a
is it a
3-year
10-year agreement?
I think it's that we just got a renewal for 3 years.
But was the original agreement for 10 years, or was it for,
I do not know that, to tell you the truth. I
so you
don't
get
know
10% of,
what they get.
And that
Yeah, and we
includes
get
the-
that from the Islanders.
Yeah.
Like,
of their sales.
no, 10% of the rebate that they get for the naming rights.
Right.
The Islanders get the money or gift in kind.
right.
We get 10% of that total as
So
a check from
there's a
the Islanders.
combination, there's a gift in kind, and there's cash.
But for us, it's just 10% of the total, whether it's gift in kind to them or not.
Okay.
We get the $10,000, $11,000, yeah.
And could I just ask about the Charlottetown Event Grounds? So the 23,000, that's for just the Shellfish Festival?
No, there's some small events, like we had a car show there on the weekend. We do some other rentals down there too, so the revenue goes into that side, but then half of all rent goes to CADC.
Oh, so it's not an in and out, you get a
We get to
percentage?
keep half.
Okay.
Like the polling stations and the
election?
elections used
Yeah.
it for, like, we've billed that out so far for this
Okay.
year. Trying to think of some of the other smaller events that go in there. Last year, we had the office for Digstown.
Yes,
Frog
right.
Lake Productions was there, so.
Okay.
Yeah, they rented it for the whole season, and then they had our trade center last year, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So moving on to large events, we were projecting $80,000 there, and that's basically based on pre-COVID events that took place. And then there's another $25,000 that results from credit card sales. So we're looking at a total there of 105,000. And again, this is based on our activity of pre-COVID, and the trend seems to be up, which is good news. So we have total revenue of $2,090,000. Just to perhaps highlight some of the expenses on the administration side, phone expenses, 35,000. 20,000 is for obviously our audit fees and legal fees. The computer expenses is that there's new computers going into the box office. Janet, do you want to make a comment about that?
They're due to be updated. One of them is from 2013, and I think the other two are from 2014 or 15, and they're just not handling the speed anymore of everything. Our system is now on a cloud, our ticketing system. So as long as we have internet capability in the box office, it doesn't matter if everything is down anywhere. Like I can work from home and get into my ticketing system, but our online sales run 24 hours a day now, whereas before, if we had a power outage, everything would go down. But a couple of years ago, we put everything on the cloud, and it's made a huge difference. Now, if there's a power blip at our office, like a couple of weeks ago there on the Tuesday, it didn't matter. We were able to keep selling online. We just put out a notice that you can't phone in right now, but you can go online and that. So we do need more computers, and I believe we're scheduled to get a few more scanners for ticket scanning when people come to events. We usually try to replace a couple of those a year just to make sure that we always have a good number, because we have the new entrance, so we now have 5 entrances to go in. So you need a minimum of 10 to 12 scanning scanners. Yeah, so.
And then, of course, we've got bank and interest charges, so the total amount there is 94,600. Moving on to our building fixed costs, there's $20,000 for insurance, another $18,000 on property taxes, for a total of $38,000. Business development, the board of directors stipend was $25,000. That was high last year. We looked at that again. That should be lower this year. And then our marketing and economic development of $30,000, and meeting and travel, which is really not a realistic number at this point. I think that we have to look at that and make it a little more realistic. Branding and uniforms, $6,000, and membership fees, so for a total of $65,000. Permanent employees or salaries for CCMI, $442,000. Another $53,000 for events, casual salaries. And permanent city employees, $342,875. And seasonal salaries with the city is $121,325. And I would point out that the power engineering, $20,000, is for when we don't have it's a contract, so that we have a power engineering when we don't have our staff on site. And benefits is $140,000. So the total budget is $1,099,200. Of course, built into those numbers are inflationary costs, contract-related costs as well to the salaries. Repairs and maintenance. Some of the highlights there: plumbing, cleaning is obviously there's always a cleanup job after every event. Snow removal, maintenance and repairs, upgrades of $42,000. I don't know if there's any particular questions along that line. So we have a total budget there around for repairs and maintenance of $156,700. Utilities, we have power and lights of $250,000, heat $310,000, and water of $25,000. So the total there is $585,000. as you may know, we are looking at some efficiencies to try and bring some of those costs down. There are some projects in the works that we haven't finalized anything as yet.
Mr. Chair, could I just ask a question? So if I look at lights, power, we went through the Honeywell audit,
Yeah.
and what numbers did you save? Like, where were we, 100,000, 10,000?
It just was starting to show up at the tail end of this fiscal year past, that we were starting to notice a difference in the lights and power, but definitely not in the heat yet.
No.
There won't
So
be anything from that, right?
could lights
The heat
go-
actually is up.
So could lights good, you're not on district heat?
Pardon?
You're not on district heat?
Yes, we are. Yeah,
And district heat is at 310,000?
yeah, we were almost, I.
Must be
our
one of
audit
their best
starts next week,
customers.
But I want to say it's up 80,000 this past fiscal over what we projected last year.
And do we see, are you expecting, Phil, or are you expecting a reduction in lighting, in lights?
Yeah, the lighting just started going down as they were finishing, putting in all the LEDs and everything. Like, it didn't really everything didn't get finished until right before Canada Games started.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll see more of it. Like, we've started a comparison that we have to do, we know, with the city to do the Honeywell
Right.
payback.
So I think last year your lighting was about 220, what was it last year? Are you up? Are you down?
Question. Just 1 second here.
Anyways, it's probably not a deal changer, no, but it's something
See,
you're,
we also had, because the Islanders got delayed playing the 21-22 season, like this year, past year, they were done playing by March 31st and our ice was out. Our ice was in till June 15th last year. And we had more games between April, May, and June than we normally would have January to March. So our cost of, in the arena, it's about $25,000 a month for power when the ice is in, and it's about 7,000 or 8,000 when the ice is out.
Okay. All right.
So we were in longer, plus we had more water, more heat. Everything just escalated because the Islanders played, yay for them, but they played a lot longer, so our ice was in.
Thank you. Just in respect time, and we have a full agenda. I think we're getting certainly the spirit of the numbers. Just trying to allow for a question or two, if there's any from the committee. Councillor Drown, you have any questions?
No, I'm just wondering about the events ground. Like, whose job is it to promote that? Like, is it, I know it falls under you, is it under our economic development department? Like, if we keep looking at, $0 or, we have this big entity there, whose job is it to try to get it going?
That would probably be a really good question, more for John and CABC and, I'm in the city. I'm not sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's why,
I don't promote stuff, I just get it ready to sell.
sure.
It is something that falls within, for the Eastlink Center, and it's something that we went through a strategic planning process about a year ago, and certainly the events ground was identified as an opportunity, or something that we needed to increase our revenue side there. As you know, we've had some challenges with our management over the last little while, and so it's something that we haven't been able to address specifically, but going forward, it's certainly the intent to do so.
That's terrific, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Drung. I have a question. That you mentioned about your joint management agreement that's about to be redone or perhaps soon. And on your revenue, it says province of PEI grants 255,700. Would that joint management agreement have a lot to do with that grant piece?
It's 80, yeah, it is 80/20, yeah.
Yeah. And just another question. On the Islanders, I don't know, Do you folks, or does anybody get a chance to look at the Islanders' books? Is that,
No, we don't get to. I don't know if you do. We don't.
how many people sit in your board?
Currently, we have one.
On our board? 7.
7? Yeah. Oh, thank you. All right. Thanks for your time, folks, coming in today.
Thank you.
If there's anything from our end, we'll be sure to
So-
reach out.
Yeah, just before they go, Mr. Chair, so to clarify, they're asking the finance administration to, it's in the backgrounder, for $1 million, correct? Philip? Okay, Philip? So the request in the backgrounder that we have, you're requesting $1 million for operational. Is that correct? It says here, for the city's 2023, 2024 operating budget, $1 million.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so is that for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or just this year? I know it says 23, 24.
Yeah. This coming
So are you
year.
signing-
Our fiscal year is April 1 to March 31st.
You're the same as ours,
Yeah.
April 1st,
Yeah.
March 31st. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming in, giving us your report, answering our questions.
So do we need a resolution, Mr. Chair? Do we need a resolution? You got $1 million in the budget? Okay.
Okay, so now we're going to, 9 became 6, I guess, which is improving planning and heritage service standards by modernizing the department's operational structure. And our CAO, Eleanor Mohammed, will speak to this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to make sure that all committee members have the new report. It was revised. There's a hard copy that should be in front of you. Perfect. Thank you for this. So this report had to go through Human Resources Committee, and we didn't quite get to it yesterday, so it will be considered by Human Resources Committee on Friday. And then it is in front of you for the budget implications. So in this report, given what has gone on with planning and heritage over the last little while in terms of recruitment and retention challenges, some issues with some of the position descriptions not really matching current market conditions. And it's led to some issues in the department, including some unreasonable workloads that are resulting in burnout, low morale, and causing retention issues. We had the manager of planning and heritage retire in May 2023. And we are essentially down to 2 senior level staff and 1 planner who are trying to churn out all the development permits and respond to much of what's going on for planning for the city, a city of almost $40,000. So this has led, this report acknowledges that we're definitely not delivering at an appropriate service level right now. And what's being proposed is to build some bench strength into this department by dividing up some of the management responsibility into the areas where planners are specialized. So what's being proposed is that a manager of development position be created, and this position will be responsible for development permits, subdivision, and rezoning approvals. They'll also be responsible for the zoning and development bylaw, including enforcement, reviews, and updates. This manager of development position will be funded from the previous manager of planning and heritage position. The second manager position is a manager of policy and heritage. This person will be responsible for long-range and heritage planning functions, including development of new policies, guidelines, and programs to address topics such as the housing crisis, loss of heritage through neglect, climate change adaptation, complete streets, aging in place, net zero, and urban design. They'll be responsible for the official plan, including monitoring, key performance indicators, reviews, and updates. The final manager, my apologies, the manager of policy and heritage is proposed to be funded by eliminating the assistant manager position that was just approved in this last budget cycle, with a small difference of a top-up that we would require. And it's proposed to be funded through existing salary and benefits within the planning department. The final manager position is the manager of building codes, and they'll be responsible for the building permits as part of development permits and ensuring that the PEI Building Codes Act is adhered to. That manager position we will be asking for in the 24-25 budget, so just flagging that now. So the intent of these managers is that they will be working managers. They will be dealing with investigations and complaints and the regular complexities that you see in a planning and heritage department. The intent is also that these managers will be working very closely together to make sure that we're delivering the best service that we can to the clients who come into planning and heritage, from the public to the developers, and really ensuring that we can put processes in place where there's consultation at the front of these processes, and applications, and just a much better level of customer service provided. So that's the restructuring from a management perspective. The other ask for today is the creation of 2 Planner 3 positions, and this is new to the department. We haven't had this level of expertise in the department before. And essentially, the reason why these positions are being created is to allow for better retention and succession in the department. So not only do we recruit people, but we can actually allow people to grow up within the department throughout their careers. This allows the planners to practice at an expert level, so this would be a principal planner. Your planner 2s that are already here would be senior planners, and your planner 1 would be a planner who's coming into the profession and early in their career. So these experts will be handling the most complex files, and we're in a situation now in Charlottetown, we're in a housing crisis, and we're going to have to come up with some very innovative solutions to this. And by having this kind of expertise in-house, it helps us from having to use consultants and to be able to guide us through this, through the challenging times that we find ourselves in. And the ask for this, the request is the funding, not just for the positions, but the funding for it as well. It's asking for the total funding for both positions, which is around $153,000. And for this year, we think we can find this within the budget of salaries and benefits. And it's anticipated that by the time these folks are hired this year, the actual cost this year will be about $76,000. And we think we can find it in the budget simply because we've had so much vacancy in the department that there's space to be able to bring in these new positions. And then they'd be fully funded as part of next year's budget. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO, for that. Are there any questions from the committee to CAO Eleanor on the request here before us?
Yeah, I have a question.
Councillor Drunt?
Thank you. You know, I know we're in, you know, we need to improve the department, and I'm all for that. You know, I think we just put out a call for directors, you know, and I think we were discussing at that time that, you know, we were looking at a director hopefully with a planner background. Would this kind of work, or is this totally separate?
Thank you, and through the chair to Councillor Duran. The director position would be very different than these working managers. So the director position that's being put out there is a director of integrated growth, and they would be responsible for planning and heritage, municipal engineering and infrastructure, as well as corporate real estate. So there's a big skill set in there. And at the level of director, the point of them is to be more strategic, eye on the horizon kind of people, spotting the big things coming and then implementing to help save us. Yes, like the parkade. Well, that's just one example of a planning issue to be addressed. Versus the managers are in the thick of it, so they're the experts in that particular area. So what's gone on here in the past and the problems why we're having trouble recruiting is we're asking planners to be both specialized in development and policy, and they're not generally the same person. So this actually recognizes that the manager who comes in for development will be solely development and at the top of their game in development and will deliver in that area, versus the policy person, top of the game in terms of policy development, housing crisis, all these other high-level issues. They'll be specialized in that area. So while we have our high-level director that will be looking after all these different elements in department areas, this will be really focused in on the planning and development side of things.
Thank you. Just a background question. I know I'm getting it from developers wherever I go is, you know, you need more staff there. We're waiting. You know, and I don't know staff are getting it out as quick as they can, but there's people that, you know, they believe it should work a lot quicker. So if we can get people in place to help that, that's going to be a big plus for us because development is booming around here. So thank you. I appreciate that, and I'll certainly support this. Thank you.
Councillor McCabe.
And I too, I sit on planning, so I see the frustrations and the pressures that our staff are facing every day. And, you know, it's indicated that they would be working managers so that they would be helping to offset some of the costs. I think we know planning is kind of the foundation and the core of our city, and I think that we really do need to invest in the services that are required in order to be able to improve that. So I definitely will be supporting this.
Mr. Chair, just going through
Your
the
worship.
budget. Just going through the budget here on planning. So we have a manager, one assistant manager, that's going to be moved up to as manager for 2022, 2023, 2024. You have 5 planners. I think we're at 3 down at the office, 1 on contract. Is that right, CAO Eleanor?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So we currently have 2 planner 2s and 1 planner 1. And then we have a consulting company trying to bolster us as much as possible to
Right.
work on these permits.
Right. So-
And we know it's not enough.
So we have an opening for 2, right? Because if we drop that contract planner, that allows 4 and 5 to be filled with a planner 3, correct? Is that what you're looking at?
So it'll be posted this week. So there's a development planner that'll be posted this week.
Right.
We just hired a policy planner. And then this would be 2 planner 3s that would be posted, 2 additional.
So we'll
We're
be going
bringing in
from,
a real bench strength.
is that going to 5 to 7 or 5 to 6?
Let me see.
Because you also have chief building inspector, and you have 2 building inspectors, but one of those building inspectors is a contract, I believe.
These would be strictly planners, so you would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, a team of 7 altogether, planners.
Okay, great. So, does this require a resolution? Or is it for just information?
This,
No.
that's,
And plus, we're going to HR too, right?
that's,
Yep. Great.
So is
Yes,
the...
I want to vote.
Is the...
And record it.
Okay. Is
But-
ki-
But
Women's program.
could I just ask for clarification? So this goes to HR just to get their response? Yeah. Doesn't have to come back here, we're done. Okay, good.
Will this go to council from HR as new positions?
this is thank you for the question, and through the chair, this is a complicated one, because really, you need HR to approve the position, and then we need finance to approve the financial components, so we'll just make it.
On behalf of both committees?
That's right. So
Okay.
if you notice, it was directed to from both committees, so we'll just flip it from both committees.
Perfect. I'll move that we support this.
And just before I go to that, just one question, CAO, is, so the net increase with staff that we're talking about here with the titling, does that line up with the projection that we had in our budgets for new staff positions for the various departments, like numbers, like did we, are in the governance thing, like is it close to being,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My best response to this is that this particular challenging area of the municipality has not been addressed to date. That's the best way I can put it to you. So in other words, there weren't recommendations into restructuring this area to improve the services considered. So there are other positions, all our positions that we need are a priority. But when I look at it from the CAO position, I'm looking at it, where are we delivering our service levels at? And in this case, planning right now is not hitting any acceptable service levels in terms of returning phone calls or responding to applications. So that's why this one is before you today.
yeah, and I guess what I was asking is, and I can't remember, I'm thinking back to our budgeting process and then what we approved, like so many police, so many, and I'm just wondering, I can't remember what the number was in planning or if it was even addressed, if we said two, I guess that's what you just clarified. Okay, thank you, that's fine.
But as Councillor Duran was saying there, Mr. Chair, that we need planners. And I think the planners we have are really just at the end of their wits. And if we're going to keep up pace, we need staff there doing the process. And so it's a 3-0 vote. Let's
No,
move on.
I get that. I was just wondering if there was a connect in there. Great, thank you. Everybody good on this? Okay. So, good? Yeah, so, yeah, so we're doing,
So the next piece there is something that Frank asked me to put on the agenda from Parks and Rec, and I actually thought he was going to be here to speak to it. But there's the resolution that will be going to council for the tender package 6 for the Simmons Center. And he's given some background information there as an update for the Simmons Center. And to be honest, I don't see how it's definitively presented there, but he, after their meeting at lunchtime today, gave me a listing of the various tenders and costs to do with Simmons, and they are at the moment projecting a shortfall. When we did the capital budget, they were working on estimates from last fall, and now that more updated costing information is coming through, they are looking at being short by about $4.7 million on the Simmons project in total. So the tender 6 is finalized now, and tender 7 is in process. Actually, I'm backwards on that. I think tender 7 has been resolved, and it's tender 6 that's in process. Tender 7? Well, he said. This is the last tender. Thank you, Sue. Now, procedurally wise, I don't know what Frank wanted us to do with this, other than for it to come to committee for information. Thank you, Sue.
Is there any,
In the manager's absence, Mr. Chair, I can speak to detail.
okay,
I was at the Parks and Recreation Leisure Activities meeting when this was presented by the manager, and it is the last tender in the package of the project that's well underway for Simmons. To the finance manager's point, it is $4 million approximately over budget, which isn't terribly shocking given the scope of work and the current market. So I think the request at finance level, if I'm understanding correctly, is that A resolution would have to go forward not only to award this work, but to borrow an additional $4 million in capital for this fiscal, or whatever the total amount is. That would have to be the resolution going forward in the package, because it's either that or we are reducing our spending in other capital projects in our current approved budget.
Is there, and what's the feeling of committee on the point of going to more, draw down the capital budget?
I just have a question. I mean, I know we're getting into cost overruns, and when you're into construction, things escalate all the time. It just gets to a point, like, are we willing to get everything we're asking for, you know, at an extended cost, or is this a discussion that should go to council again? This is a major number, and you know, I guess what we're looking for, or what Frank's looking for, is, I don't know if council would be prepared to do that. Just, you know, I guess we got to move it forward for a discussion, right? Is that what we're asking for today? I mean, for us just to come in and say, okay, 4 million is, you know, where do we stop? That's just a question I have.
Thank you, Councillor Drunk. CA, that puts you on the spot, I guess, but CAO Elner or Sue, could you speak to Councillor Drong's comment?
Mr. Chair, I just checked to see if our manager was in the building, and unfortunately, he's not. It was my understanding that he had briefed our finance manager on what the ask was here today. If the mayor was in the room, he could probably also speak to the project and to where we are with this particular scope of work. I'm just trying to find in your package what exactly you were provided. Bear with me, Mr. Chair.
Yep, no problem.
So you can see, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, in the backgrounder for this resolution, there is a really clear outline of the amount of approvals to date with respect to what was approved, and with a very significant amount of it being the ICIP partnership. So the discussion today, and although we can't count on it, part of the discussion today was that the manager will go back to ICIP to see if there's any way that they can up the ante with what they approve, because they have approved 18.7 million of the 25 original amount of the budget. That's federal funding. So one of the conversations today was to go back to ICIP to see if there's any way that they could increase their funding based on the fact that we do have cost overruns. So that's on the table right now, as something to explore. But I guess the issue right now is if we don't award this tender soon, we're going to have a full-on stop of work at the project site, which could end up costing us even more money down the road. I think it's understood that, and I totally appreciate what Councillor Duran is saying, that you know, when you get in this far in the game, it's really hard to have any control over what's coming at you with respect to quotes. And we're going in this case with the lowest bid. The best bid and the lowest, and also the lowest bid with Fitz and Snow. And what they would bring to the table also is a significant project management piece as well. So I think, you know, it would be my recommendation to proceed with this as it is, and then have another conversation at another time at the Finance Committee level as far as recommendations moving forward on how we deal with the $4 million amount before we get to year end, because we could have other projects that come in under budget in other divisions. So it might not be an extra $4 million that we have to borrow at the end of the day. But if we could award this in good faith to keep this very major project in our community rolling, then we can revisit the $4 million piece at some point in time at a subsequent meeting in the near future. That would be my recommendation in absence of the manager.
Thank you, Sue, and we may be back to you before we finish the conversation here. And Betty, our finance manager, just like to get your advice or comments on what Sue was suggesting in our finance piece, and how it, obviously it's a number we weren't, I guess we're not surprised, but a number that hasn't been budgeted for. So what comments would you give the committee on what we're dealing with here?
Well, in my conversation with Frank, my understanding was that it was likely this money would not be spent in this fiscal year. Now, I know that our capital budget does cover more than 1 year, so any projects that we're approving, they do get counted as part of our capital budget this year. But I don't believe that the $4.7 million will need to be borrowed specifically within this fiscal year. It's more likely next year. But it is still an additional $4.7 million.
Exactly. Yeah. Councillor McCabe.
And I agree with what Sue has indicated today. I don't think any of us want to spend $4 million that we didn't plan for and go, but we're already, as they say, the boots are in the ground and the project started, and we don't really have any other option unless we want to pay an extra $2 million that came out in the tender. So this is the best bang for the buck. Hopefully they'll be able to go back and get some additional funding, but we've committed to this project, and I think we have to see it through, keep going.
Councillor Drown, you any more on that? Yep. Okay. All right. Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded Councillor Drown. Forward to council to proceed. Thank you. And then, well, and we're on item. Rory, you good to go on the award server backups and disaster recovery? Hey, Rory, go ahead.
Okay, so the first one we have here, it's just an award for an RFP for server backups and disaster recovery. We're looking to get a. We had a few come in, but two of those were disqualified. They just didn't meet the requirements. The only remaining proposal came in at a price of $34,284 per year for 3 years, which is under budget. There is an optional piece that would give us some extra disaster recovery, but we're recommending that we don't go forward with that at this time. It's an extra $21,000, which would put us over budget. So at this time, I'd say we don't quite need that extra piece, and I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Rory. Any questions for Rory on
That'll
this?
take off some of our $4 million. Good job, Rory, going under budget. I move to support this and move it on to council.
Seconded. Okay. Thank you, Councillor McCabe. So moved and seconded by Councillor Drown. Thank you both. Thank you, Rory.
And then there is a second one as well there for the next item.
Continue. And
the next piece is just a renewal of a contract. It's a 3-year commitment at $50,000, approximately $50,000 per year. So total of I think it's have the total in here somewhere. I just can't find it, but it's $151,180 plus applicable taxes over 3 years. So this is for our GIS system. We're pretty heavily invested into it at this time, so it's recommended that we continue with this agreement.
And when you use that term, the GIS, is that under Johnson? Is it? Am I saying Paul Johnson's world?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Paul Johnston with Asset and Infrastructure Management, and he's got the GIS team. There's also a GIS technician with the water and sewer utility.
Yep. Thank you,
Just have one question there.
Councillor Cape or Drong. Sorry.
Are residents, like, somebody asked me the other day, he wants to build a shed. He's not sure exactly where the border line is that he can build. So I kind of blatantly said, I think we have one here. Would they be able to reference anybody in the department just to give them a, I know when we were asking questions, water and sewer, we have a GIS picture that just gives you an outline. Would a regular person, like a resident, be able to ask us for this?
I'll be honest, I don't really know the answer to that, just because I think you're getting into surveying and stuff there. I know we have kind of outlines of stuff and aerial photographs, but it probably wouldn't be able to get into, where can you build, stuff like that. It's kind of outside of my expertise, unfortunately.
Yeah, I understand you couldn't use it for a building permit to give you the, you'd have to have a surveyor. But if someone, had his lot and he didn't know if, exactly where it was, I'm just thinking, I just told him to call the planning anyways and see if they could give him a direction. But thank you for that.
I will move that we move this to council for approval.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Drong. So moved. Yep. Thank you, Rory.
Thank you.
So I believe let's take us to 10, grants policy and evaluating grants applications. And Betty, Manager Finance.
Sure. So the committee was asking for additional information to be added to give more clear criteria for how to evaluate grants, was my understanding. So a suggestion was put forward that we develop a scoring template. So we have drafted up something here as a starting point for discussion to see if this is the sort of thing, if this would better meet the needs of what folks were looking for. And the idea would be that staff would initially score the grant and then it would be brought forward from there.
Councillor McCabe.
I really like this template, and I want to thank you guys for bringing this forward again, just to kind of add to the work that was done on the policies and the bylaws. It provides kind of our criteria, and then it also has the space for explanation for justifying why. So when it is presented to the Finance Committee next year at budget time, there's a reason behind it and where the rank comes, because each department would be responsible based on the new asks to fill this out and be able to justify how it ties to our strategic plan, why when the ask was 100,000, here's why we're giving 50,000. So it's just really good. It just gives us a little bit of teeth behind why and how and provide some consistency. So thank you very much. I am definitely in favor of adding this little amendment piece to our policy and bylaw.
Councillor Drong.
Thank you, Councillor McAleer. Yeah, it's the same thing. We just wanted to have some criteria in place so you could justify why you're giving somebody a certain amount of money. And like this, the thing that you made in the back certainly helps. You could check the boxes and that was for something that we discussed, and it's very positive. So thank you for that, and I'll certainly support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Drong. Betty, as we discussed earlier this afternoon, like on this, on the template we have in front of you, I suggest that, based on our, because there are some of the points in here, like, on our grants policy, if we go to section 7.1 goes through, 8F. I just, thought that if everything that was in the eligibility criteria, 8F, was on the grid, it would match up perfectly with, match up perfectly with, with the grid. And if that's, if committee, how you feel about that, but to me, it would make sense. We have the eligibility criteria in our grants policy, so if we could take 7.1A to F and put it in this grid, that would be a suggestion I would have. I don't know if that has any support with the rest of the committee, but
Yeah, I think the points that are in the matrix there are very similar to what's in the policy. Why they're in a slightly different order, I don't know, but we certainly can do that. Does that make sense to folks, that we have it, the criteria coming specifically?
No. So to help us, Sue?
As one of the authors of this piece of work, to just transpose eligibility directly into a measuring tool like this, you have to look back to your eligibility criteria, and one of them, for instance, is if it's tourism related. If you just automatically transpose that into the chart, if it's not tourism related, they lose a bunch of points right out of the gate. So when you look at applications, you have to look at a lens that's a little broader, because the criteria here is not the exact same as what your eligibility might be. It's not, they're not one and the same. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you just take those and put them in here, then someone that has nothing to do with, who meets at least one of our criteria items in the policy document, they might only meet one of those sections, and then they're going to get fails in everything else, potentially, if we're just automatically transposing. Do you know what I'm saying? They're not necessarily one and the same. The criteria in the scoring sheet is more global.
Well, with the how behind it too, with each ask, when this is filled out, it's like teaching. It's like a rubric in teaching. It's being able to justify the why behind what the criteria is, and it provides us with opportunity for discussion, because it can change depending. Each year we're going to have different amounts of money. There could be lots of different factors that come into play. So you just want to have something in place that we can at least, the recommendation will come from the proper department, then council will be able to look at that and be able to justify yes or no based on the criteria and the asks and the explanations.
Yeah.
I don't want to make it too tight.
Yeah, and I'm just, I think we're in a position here, we don't have to decide or recommend this necessarily today or whatever, or I don't even, is there necessary for this to go to council, or?
Yes, I'll move that.
Yeah. And you're comfortable the way it sits and reads?
Because it's like a mushroom. It takes, it oversees everything rather than going down certain areas, right? And I think that's what Sue was saying. If you put in some other thing, then it limits different people to apply. So this is about as close as you can get as a big blanket, in my understanding. Am I correct in saying that?
So Sue, then you, like the points A to G, you just felt you come up with those. I'm not questioning your what you selected there, but you come up with like that you felt was the most flexible or most the
They
best.
still had to tie to our
ha-
policy and our procedure, right?
Yeah,
So we adopted our policy and our bylaw. So the criteria is more for us to be able to understand and be justified in why certain people are getting certain things. It just provides that further, a little more transparency around how money's being given out and for what reasons.
Yeah. And again, we recently gave out grants and applications, and there'd always be debate, I guess, or questions about how you did things and how you allocated things. But even on grids, right there, it certainly may be an improvement, but it's probably not. It's probably going to be subject to criticism too, right? Because my mind's like filling out a report card, A's and B's, and it's somewhat subjective. So, but if it can if it can assist in some rationale, I'm all for it. I think it's a great tool. I don't think it's going to come without. At the end of the day, right? There's always probably going to be somewhat subject to criticism, and they have to accept that, I guess.
So,
All right.
Mr. Chair, just to answer your question, in the eligibility criteria, in the actual policy document, it says to be eligible for funding, an application for support must meet one or more of the following. So someone could apply under our policy and only meet one of the criteria items, whereas in our evaluation, to Councillor Duran and Councillor McCabe's point, is we're taking a broad sweep of measurable items that connect to the city's strategic plan and our own goals and commitments to our community, and they're much more global statements that we can evaluate every application on.
So just on that evaluation and criteria and transparency, and like, will this scoring template live and be part, like, will it be when the committee puts down their scores 1 to 5, like, will that be public?
This will be scored by staff, won't it? It won't be scored by us. It'll be justified to us from staff why these should be considered as new initiatives and where.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct, Councillor. Just to the chair, for the purposes of process moving forward, this would form part of the policy document. So this would form like a schedule of the policy document. And then when staff are bringing forward recommendations on grants during the budget process, they will have this attached, rather than the summary where you saw where staff recommendation, where it said staff recommendation in one of the columns. This would actually accompany the grant request, so you can see what the final scoring was from the staff on this.
Thank you. I'm lost in the process, and no, thank you. I understand it now. It'll be coming to us Oh, great. All right. Thank you for that, Sue. So and Betty, go ahead.
Can I just make a couple of comments or questions? This will be a public document though, right? Like, this will be part of the policy and part run on the website. So when I see, if you have 21 to 25%, you'll get 70 to 80% of your grant. So what came to mind for me was, well, does that mean folks will just be increasing their ask? So I think one that was talked about a bit, that we didn't give the full amount of the grant request, was Blooming House. We gave them $50,000 if they asked for $75,000. If they know that this is the measuring tool, might they be more likely to ask for a higher amount so they end up with what they want? I don't know, like a template like this, it's hard to get everything in there, and it's hard to have everything work. And I think what's here is really good. But I just wondered, and I don't know how you would build anything better in there unless we put like a limit, the top grant requests we'll look at is X amount to prevent that from happening, or maybe I'm just being too jaded in the way I'm thinking about it.
That's a good. The actual scoring could just be excluded from the document. That could be, for sure.
And perhaps as part of our overall recommendation, we could also document the rationale. Like, I'm sure, like, I don't know what the rationale was in that particular case, but I'm sure there was some, and if we just documented it, then if we ever get questioned, it's there. Okay, I just want to make another couple comments. Wayne Long called me this afternoon, and his department is getting a number of calls about grants, and folks know that we haven't allocated the full $500,000 that's in the budget, so they're asking about the process for applying for additional grants, and that is in the policy. It does say that we accept applications throughout the year, so as long as the policy is available on the website, which I believe it is, that would be the process for that. And the second piece is, he was asking about an appeal process, which I don't think is addressed in the policy, but I don't know if we need to. Apparently, he's heard about a couple that plan to appeal the amount that they were approved for.
CAO Eleanor, I saw you shaking your head. Do you have some a comment that you can share with us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When it comes to grants, grants are not guaranteed. It's based on how much money council has each year in terms of how they're allocating the budget. It's ultimately a decision of council, and that's not something that's appealable. So there is no appeal process simply because it's a decision of council based on the funds that are available in that year, and no one is guaranteed any funding depending on how the economy is going and what kind of grants the municipality gets. Some years there could be no grants, and that's just the process usually for municipal government when it comes to grants. Thanks.
And many of them are going to be reviewed yearly anyway. So you wouldn't want to be complaining for the 50,000 we just gave you, because maybe you say thank you and try again next year.
Yeah, and to your point, CAO, like, so the dollar amount this year was 500,000, right? That was the amount that was approved for grants, and then it worked down from there.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. And essentially, when it comes down to grants and council and the decisions that are made at budget time, is council has to weigh all the priorities of the municipality and the different needs, internal and external. And that amount available for grants will vary from year to year. Thank you.
So, Betty, did you have more to share on your point? So to your concern that's been passed on through economic development on potential future requests, I would think we're open for business on new requests, additional requests through the funding year, would be my understanding. Does that committee have a different thought or view on that? So, yeah, that's the answer to that. Like, so if there's new requests come before us, I guess we'll come to this committee first, and we'll have to debate them, and maybe we have a grid by then, and or not. I don't know. No, that maybe not, the grid wouldn't work on that one anyway. But as we're currently handling grant requests, I guess it'd be very similar to the mindset of how we allocated the grants that have been approved, and just look at the application or applications as presented, and make a recommendation. Anything else on the grant policy bylaw?
I'll move that we send this on to council. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. Moved by Councilor McCabe, and seconded by Councilor Drown, to move this on to council for adoption. Thank you, Betty and Sue, for your work on the grid. Thank you. Betty, monthly financial statements.
Yes, these are provided for information, although I'm happy to entertain any questions either today or feel free to email me with any questions. I've included the 1 month ended April 30th. It's just 1 month into the year end. It doesn't really tell you a lot, but I thought it would be good to get in the habit of making sure we have that monthly reporting. I've also included for information where we're at with the March 31st financial statements as well. We are still in the process of completing our year end, so these are by no means final yet, but it's where we're at right now. So all invoices, all billings, all the regular stuff is in these financial statements. Some accruals and regular year-end stuff is not in here yet. So I've actually deleted the below-the-line stuff, so the, like the MCEG grant and the extraordinary expenses and the more not regular items, just because I thought it was a bit misleading including that. So if we wanted to look at what our budget is just for operations, the regular operations compared to the year-to-date, our budget for that portion was a deficit of 6.6 million, and at the moment we're tracking a deficit of 1.6 million. So far, that's good news. But as I said, we're not finished yet, and of course it has to go through audit. But this is just to give you an idea of how we're doing.
Any questions for Betty on the current financial update? And I guess you're feeling comfortable on the information that we have to get to the auditors?
Yep, I think we're moving ahead well.
Yep. Councillor Drown, you good? All right, thank you for that, Betty. And that, where are we going here? 12, yeah, 12, open tender, RFPs, RFQs.
Now, this is something that we have traditionally brought as information to this committee. Is this something that you folks want to see every month?
I think it's great. The more information we have, we know where things sit, and then we don't have all the questions wondering where, so thank you.
Perfect. And Sabakun puts together most of this information. She's our senior accountant, and one of the columns she has there is status, and she and I talked about this month saying, well, to have a column that says status open, well, that's the whole point of this document, is to show the open tenders. So it wasn't easy to put together quickly in the last couple of days, but I was curious to see if we could put the budget amount in there, just so you know when you're seeing a tender here, okay, is that a... Is it in budget, is it out of budget? Yeah. And is it like $5 million, or is it 100,000? Because just offhand, I don't know enough about these to know if they're big things or small things. So that's, again, another piece of information we'll look at adding just to make it, help you put it into context a bit better.
Thank you for that, Betty. Is any other questions to Betty on this piece? Thank you. So then take us to item 13, last item, BD Matrix update. Manager
So
Betty?
this gives an update on where we're at with some of the finance department's pieces in the BDO report. So the first one, in April, we were to develop spreadsheets to track capital projects and report quarterly to the Finance Committee. And we do have spreadsheets in place. And to the next Finance Committee, we will bring the first quarter of this fiscal year, as well as the final position that we're in for the end of March. So the whole month of March, the final picture, as well as the first quarter of the new year. In May, there was nothing for the BDO report in May, but what kept us busy in May was the grant policy. Although we had a lot of help from Sue and her team in that. Thank you, Sue. June, now the BDO report, or the Eleanor's matrix did talk about bringing it to the committee in these particular months, but our committee meets so early in the month, we didn't have too much time to work on it. So I hope it's all right with you folks if we continue to work on the procurement bylaw in June, and it will come to the committee and council in July. And updating the council remuneration bylaw with HR and updating the staff travel and meal remuneration policy with HR, we will continue to work on this month and in July. And we may have it ready for July, but I think it's more likely to be ready for August. And then per the BDO matrix, the electronic devices and social media policy was to be updated to include personal devices and permitted reimbursements, including disposition of devices and cleaning of city data. Finance is doing that with HR and IT. We would target bringing that to council and the committee in August. And the redistribution and use of city property policy to be updated and bring that to the committee and council in August as well.
Do these go to the prospective committees as well? So would Public Works, the redistribution and use of city property policy, would that go, or just comes right through finance? Okay.
CAO Elmer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, it should come to respective committees. We're trying to coordinate, keeping everyone on top of this matrix and keeping us up to date. So sometimes what we might see happen is like what you saw here this evening, where one report's going to 2 different committees to make sure we're notifying all the right folks and getting the feedback that we need to get.
Do you know, I really think, if I could make a recommendation and just for consideration, that whether it comes through yourself but during our special meetings in council once a month or whatever, that this is kind of presented, it could be presented from you as the CAO, so that every single member of council gets to see the work you did to say, we are going to do better with our policy. Here's our matrix, here's the goals we've set, and a report could come maybe just from you to all of council, which then we don't have to worry about anybody missing it, because it's great work.
Thank you, Councillor McCabe. Is there any further questions to Betty on the matrix evolution? All right, that concludes our committee meeting. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Councillor McCabe, second of Councillor Duran. Thank you.